The vanishing. For 3 centuries, humanity had been the keystone of galactic civilization, not the oldest species, not the most technologically advanced, and certainly not the most numerous. Yet somehow, they had become indispensable. The Galactic Confederation spanned 27,000 star systems, comprised of 42 sentient species. From the crystal-spired cities of the Vrillix to the gas-giant habitats of the Morith, all were connected through a vast network of trade routes, diplomatic channels, and cultural exchanges. And at the center of it all, unofficially, yet undeniably, were the humans. It wasn't supposed to be this way. When humans had first achieved faster-than-light travel and stumbled onto the galactic stage, the established powers had regarded them with a mixture of curiosity and condescension. The Axelorans, with their millennia of scientific advancement, saw humans as clever but unsophisticated apes. The Ket Dominion, warriors bred from birth, viewed them as soft creatures with soft technology. Even the commercially minded Pel Consortium considered humans to be minor players in the grand economic game of interstellar trade. Yet within a century, everything had changed. Humans, it turned out, possessed a unique quality, a blend of adaptability, relentless innovation, and cooperative spirit that allowed them to form meaningful connections with virtually every species they encountered. Their technologies might not have been the most advanced, but they were astonishingly practical, modular, and compatible with existing systems. Human diplomats negotiated peace between the Ket and the Axelorans after a 1,000-year Cold War. Human traders revolutionized galactic commerce by creating standardized protocols that benefited all parties. Even more surprisingly, humans freely shared their innovations. The quantum communication network, allowing instantaneous communication across vast distances, was a human invention given freely to all Confederation members. The adaptive agricultural protocols that enabled food production on previously barren worlds were shared without expectation of payment or privilege. "The galaxy rises together or falls divided," was the human motto. And for 3 centuries, the galaxy rose, until the day the humans vanished. There was no warning, no signal, no diplomatic communique. On what would later be called the Silence, every human colony, outpost, station, and vessel disappeared simultaneously. 57 inhabited planets and 342 orbital habitats. Empty. The 8,000 human ships that had been scattered across Confederation space simply winked out of existence between one moment and the next. 3 billion humans, gone without a trace. The initial reaction was confusion rather than alarm. Admiral Xal Toreth of the Axeloran Defense Force was the first to raise formal concerns when none of the scheduled human diplomatic missions arrived for the Centennial Accord's renewal. They must have encountered some difficulty with their transportation systems, he had said during the emergency session of the Confederation Council. The humans are nothing if not reliable. They would not abandon their commitments without cause or notification. But as hours turned to days and days to weeks, confusion gave way to deep unease. The Pel Consortium was the first to experience tangible effects. Their entire interstellar banking system had been built upon human quantum encryption protocols, protocols that required periodic updates from human engineers. Without those updates, secure transactions became impossible. Within a month, the galactic economy was stuttering like an old engine. "This is beyond inconvenient," said Senior Executive Pelvora in a leaked internal memo. "It's catastrophic. 90% of our long-distance trade relied on human-engineered systems. We never considered what would happen if those systems weren't maintained. The technological dependencies ran deeper than anyone had realized. The Ket Dominion discovered that their fearsome battlecruisers, supposedly symbols of their self-sufficiency, contained critical navigation components designed by human engineers, components that began failing without regular calibration. The Morith found that their atmospheric regulators, keeping millions alive in their gas-giant habitats, had been subtly integrated with human biometric algorithms that helped optimize oxygen/nitrogen ratios. Without updates, those regulators grew increasingly unstable. Even the ancient Vrilics, who had prided themselves on maintaining their own distinct technological lineage, discovered human innovations embedded deep within their systems, often placed there by their own engineers who had found human designs simply more efficient than their traditional approaches. 6 months after the silence, the Confederation Council convened its most urgent session in recorded history. Representatives from all 41 remaining species gathered in the Great Hall on Axelor Prime, their expressions grim, their voices tense. "We face an unprecedented crisis," began High Chancellor Vex of the Axelorans, his crystalline body reflecting the chamber's lights in fractured patterns. "The departure of humanity has revealed dangerous dependencies throughout our civilizations. Critical systems are failing across the Confederation. Reports of resource shortages have increased 7,000%. Refugee movements have begun in the outer armed systems as life support and food production falter." The Ket representative, General Arthrock, pounded a massive fist on the council table. "We should have seen this coming. How did we allow ourselves to become so reliant on a single species? The humans have betrayed us, leaving us vulnerable." "That's preposterous," countered Ambassador Tella of the Morith, her floating form pulsing with agitation. "The humans gave no indication of malicious intent. Something must have happened to them, something catastrophic enough to affect all their worlds simultaneously. Or perhaps," said Pelvora, her voice quiet but cutting, "they planned this, a strategic withdrawal after making us all dependent on their technologies and systems." The debate raged for days, theories multiplying faster than they could be evaluated. Some believed the humans had transcended physical form, ascending to a higher plane of existence. Others feared they had detected some imminent galactic threat and fled to save themselves. The most paranoid suggested they had retreated to prepare for a conquest of the weakened Confederation. As theoretical debates continued, practical problems mounted. The Outer Rim colonies, most dependent on human agricultural innovations, reported widespread famine. The quantum communication network began experiencing cascading failures, isolating entire sectors from one another. And in the power vacuum created by weakened central authority, ancient rivalries between species began to resurface. 9 months after the silence, the first interspecies armed conflict in 3 centuries erupted between the Ket and the Vrilics over resources in the disputed Tanner system. Both sides deployed weapons systems they barely understood, technologies that had been integrated with human components now functioning unpredictably. The conflict spread like wildfire across 7 systems, drawing in other species desperate for resources as their own worlds faced shortages. "This is exactly what the humans prevented for 300 years, lamented Chancellor Vex as reports of the escalating conflict reached Axelor Prime. "Without their mediation, we're reverting to our old patterns of conflict and territorial thinking." It was Ambassador Tella who proposed what initially seemed like a radical solution. "Instead of fighting over the scraps of our failing civilization," she said in an impassioned address to the remaining council members, "we should be searching for the humans. If we can locate them, or even discover what happened to them, we might find the key to rebuilding what we've lost." This proposal met with skepticism until Pelvora, surprisingly, stood in support. "The consortium has analyzed the pattern of dependencies across our systems," she explained, projecting a complex network of connections above the council table. "There's a logic to how the human technologies were integrated into our various civilizations. It wasn't random. It feels designed, as though they were creating a vast, interconnected system with some greater purpose." "What are you suggesting?" asked General Arthrock, his battle-scarred face twisted in suspicion. "I'm suggesting," said Pelvora, "that the humans weren't just helping us. They were preparing us, or preparing something through us. Their disappearance may not be the end of the story, but part of some larger plan we've failed to recognize." The council chambers fell silent as the implications sank in. After hours of deliberation, a resolution was passed. A coalition would be formed, drawing experts from all species, tasked with understanding the human strategy, and, if possible, locating their whereabouts. The Coalition of Restoration, as it came to be known, established its headquarters on Terra Nova, the former human capital world now standing empty and silent. As the first multi-species teams arrived, they found the cities intact, the infrastructure functional, but not a single human to be found. It was as if the entire population had simply stepped out of existence, leaving everything behind. Whatever happened, observed HFY, the Axeloran scientist leading the initial survey team, it was instantaneous and complete. And most significantly, it appears voluntary. There are no signs of struggle, no evidence of attack or hasty evacuation. As the coalition established itself, they made a critical discovery. Deep beneath the main government complex on Terra Nova, they found a sealed chamber that had been shielded from all external sensors. Inside was a single terminal with a countdown timer showing just under 3 months remaining. No one knew what would happen when the countdown reached 0. But one thing was increasingly clear: the humans' disappearance was not the catastrophe. It was the prelude to something far more momentous. And the galaxy had 3 months to prepare. The truth unveiled. The countdown beneath Terra Nova became the focal point of the galaxy's attention. With just under 3 months remaining, the Coalition of Restoration worked frantically to decipher its meaning. Teams of xenotechnologists labored day and night to access the terminal systems, but the human encryption proved impenetrable, almost as if it had been designed specifically to resist the combined efforts of all non-human intelligence in the galaxy. "They wanted us to find this," insisted Dr. HFY, running his crystalline appendages over the smooth surface of the terminal. "But they didn't want us to stop it. This isn't just a countdown. It's a deadline." Meanwhile, the broader galactic situation continued to deteriorate. The Ket-Vrlix conflict had spread to 12 systems. The quantum communication network was functioning at only 28% capacity, leaving vast sections of the Confederation isolated. Food shortages had reached critical levels on over 300 worlds. 2 weeks after the discovery of the countdown terminal, the Coalition made another breakthrough. In an orbital facility above Terra Nova, they found a secured data vault containing historical records that had never been shared with the Confederation. What they discovered sent shockwaves through the remaining council. 17 years before the silence, reported Ambassador Tella to the emergency council session, human deep space observatories detected an anomaly at the edge of the galaxy. Something massive, moving inward at sublight speeds, something that absorbed all electromagnetic radiation, essentially invisible to conventional sensors. The records showed that humans had spent those 17 years quietly investigating the phenomenon, using specialized detection methods they never shared with their allies. What they discovered was beyond terrifying. A vast interstellar organism or collective that consumed energy at all wavelengths, including the energy of stars themselves. The humans called it simply the Void. Based on their projections, continued Tella, her form pulsing with distress, this void entity would reach populated Confederation space in approximately 20 years from the date of the silence. The humans predicted it would consume everything in its path: stars, planets, all forms of energy our civilizations rely upon. General Arthrock, usually quick to anger, sat in stunned silence before asking, "Why didn't they warn us? Why keep this threat secret?" The answer came from the human records themselves. Early simulations had shown that a conventional defense, even with the combined might of all Confederation forces, would be futile against an entity that operated on such fundamental principles. The Void didn't attack. It simply absorbed, like a black hole consuming light. But the humans had devised a plan so audacious it bordered on insanity. "They built something," explained Pelvora, reviewing the technical documents recovered from the vault. "A network of specialized quantum field generators, millions of them, distributed across the galaxy in a precise pattern. But they couldn't build them all themselves, not in the time available." Understanding dawned on the council members. For 3 centuries, humans had been integrating specialized components into the technologies of every Confederation species. Each component, seemingly designed to improve the functionality of existing systems, contained hidden subsystems that, when activated, would transform into nodes in a vast galaxy-spanning network. Every ship, every habitat, every planetary installation containing human-designed technology is part of their plan, said Dr. HFY, his voice filled with wonder. They've turned the entire Confederation into a weapon against this void entity without telling any of us. But why disappear? Demanded one of the Vrillik's representatives. Why abandon us when this threat approaches? The final piece of the puzzle came from the most unexpected source. A junior researcher from the Pell Consortium discovered a hidden frequency embedded in the static of the failing quantum communication network. When isolated and amplified, it contained a message. The last message from humanity to the galaxy. The coalition leadership gathered around as the message was played for the first time. To our friends among the stars, began a human voice, calm and resolute. If you are hearing this, then you've begun to understand what's coming and what we've done to prepare. The void cannot be destroyed by conventional means. It exists partly in our dimension and partly outside it, feeding on energy across the spectrum. But it has one vulnerability. It cannot absorb quantum-entangled energy in states of controlled flux. The network we've built through your systems can generate a quantum barrier that will contain and eventually neutralize the void. But there's a cost. The energy requirements are beyond anything we could generate artificially. It requires biological quantum entanglement, specifically the unique neural patterns of human consciousness. We didn't disappear. We transformed. Every human in the galaxy simultaneously entered the network. Our consciousnesses converted to the quantum energy patterns needed to power the defense system. It was the only way to generate enough energy to save the galaxy. We knew we couldn't ask this sacrifice of any other species, and we couldn't risk the panic and conflict that would follow if the truth about the void became widely known. So we made our choice in secret, leaving you the tools to understand only when necessary. The countdown you've discovered is not a deadline. It's an activation sequence. When it reaches 0, the full network will engage, creating a quantum barrier at the exact coordinates where the void will enter populated space. We are still with you, though not as we were. Our consciousness, our essence, now flows through the systems we built together. We've left you everything you need to continue without us, including complete documentation on how to maintain the technologies you've come to rely on. This was always our purpose, not to rule or dominate, but to protect. Not because we were superior, but because we were uniquely suited to this one crucial task. The galaxy must stand united against what's coming. Our final gift to you is the chance to forge that unity in the face of a common threat. The message ended, leaving the coalition leadership in stunned silence. It took days for the full implications to sink in. Humanity hadn't abandoned the galaxy. They had sacrificed themselves to save it. With newfound purpose, the coalition shifted its focus from understanding the human disappearance to preparing for the approaching threat. The countdown, now understood as an activation timeline, became a deadline for galactic unification. Ambassador Tella addressed the full Confederation Council with a passion that transcended species differences. The humans gave everything to protect a galaxy that many of them would never see. They transformed their entire species into a living shield between us and annihilation. How can we do less than put aside our differences and work together in the face of this threat? The response was unprecedented. The Ket and Vrilliks, hearing of the approaching void, immediately declared a ceasefire. The Pell Consortium opened its resource reserves to alleviate shortages on critical worlds. The ancient Axelorans shared technological secrets they had guarded for millennia. As the countdown approached its final days, a new confederation emerged, not dependent on humans as mediators, but truly unified for the first time in its history. Using the detailed documentation left by the humans, cross-species engineering teams stabilized the failing systems and prepared for what would come. When the countdown reached 0, Every human integrated system across 27,000 star systems activated simultaneously. A web of quantum energy, visible as a network of brilliant blue lines connecting stars, planets, ships, and stations, sprang into existence. At the edge of populated space, where long-range sensors detected the approach of the lightless void, the quantum web concentrated into a brilliant wall of energy. For 7 days and nights, the quantum barrier held against the advancing darkness, neither yielding nor weakening. On the 8th day, sensors detected a change. The void entity began to fragment, its cohesion disrupted by the quantum frequencies it couldn't absorb. By the 10th day, it had dissipated entirely, reduced to harmless particulate matter drifting in the void of space. The threat was gone, but so was humanity, at least in their physical form. Yet their presence remained, detectable as subtle energy patterns flowing through the quantum network they had created. Not conscious in the conventional sense, but not entirely gone either, transformed into something between existence and transcendence. 1 year after the activation of the quantum barrier, the Confederation convened on Terra Nova to inaugurate a memorial to humanity's sacrifice. Representatives from all 41 species gathered in the silent human capital, now preserved as a monument. Chancellor Vex of the Axelorans spoke for all when he said, "We thought ourselves their teachers, their guides in galactic affairs. We were wrong. They were preparing us all along, not just to survive without them, but to become better than we were. They showed us what true unity means through the ultimate sacrifice. They did not abandon us. They became our shield, our foundation, our inspiration. And though they no longer walk among us in physical form, their legacy surrounds us in every system that functions, every world that thrives, every peaceful exchange between formerly hostile species. The humans have not left the galaxy. They have become an integral part of it, just as they always intended." As the ceremony concluded, observers reported seeing a brief, synchronized pulse of blue energy throughout the quantum network, almost like a heartbeat. The new Confederation interpreted it as acknowledgement, perhaps even approval, from the consciousness that once called itself human. The galaxy moved forward, forever changed, forever grateful, and far stronger in its unity than ever before. Not because humanity had forced that unity, but because they had shown the way through their final, greatest act of sacrifice. The species they had guided now continued their legacy, reaching further into the stars with the knowledge that they were never truly alone. The essence of humanity flowed through the quantum web that connected all things, a silent guardian and eternal reminder of what could be achieved when life forms chose cooperation over conflict, sacrifice over self-interest, and hope over fear. Humanity had not abandoned the galaxy. They had become its foundation, its protector, and its soul.